let's go ahead and call this City Council work session to order. Tonight at our work session, we're going to be reviewing the Community Campus Park Development Plan update, and then we'll be doing a review of our park system development charges, SDCs, and fee in lieu. Just a note on that is this is a work session, so we'll be having a conversation about what we want to take up at a future meeting, but we won't be voting on anything in work session, and then we'll be opening up for a city council meeting at 7:30. With that, Jordan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll let Rochelle do the introductions. We're happy to be bringing back this revised concept for your review tonight.
Well, good evening, Council. Yep, tonight is faces that are familiar with us now. Lango Hansen, we have Kurt and Brian with Lango Hansen Architect, and we have Maddie, who's been on virtual with us, and she's here tonight in person. So thank you for making the trip. We appreciate it. It's nice to meet you. Good to see you face to face. So yeah, so this will be one of the final council updates that we have before we enter into the design development phase. And we've brought previous concepts in front of the council, January 17th, February 21st. And so tonight will be an opportunity to see that final phase, including the master plan. And then we'll have an opportunity to talk about preliminary costs for both phase 1 and phase 2. And then we'll end with any comments or questions that the council might have. And after this meeting tonight, we're almost at the finish line for applying for the grant. And we have one final survey where the community will get to see the final outcome and provide comments. It's more set up like a website, which is going to look great. People can see the progress we've made. They can take a look at phase 1, phase 2, and provide comments. So we have one last open house, the 23rd, which is this Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30 at the community center. And then, yeah, we've got the resolution to apply for a grant, which is on the consent agenda. And then next week we'll push the send button and hopefully get that grant. So I guess without further ado, I'll hand it over to Lango Hansen and the American Ramp Company for their update.
Great, thank you, Rochelle. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to give you an update on the park plans. I just want to mention, as Rochelle said, we have been working in earnest on the grant. We are, I don't know if you mentioned, but we're looking at $485,000 for the grant. So a substantial amount of money, but I think in looking through the criteria for awarding the grant, we hit almost every single box. So we're really excited about the story that we're going to tell, and certainly the public outreach and the public process has been a testament to I think what you're seeing tonight and how people really feel about creating this park for the city of Sandy. I wanted just to briefly start out with this plan. I think this may be familiar to you because it was one of the 3 plans that we originally presented at the second public open house and then the subsequent online survey. And in some respects, it was almost a landslide in terms of what we heard both at the open house, but also the survey itself in terms of the meander being the plan that people, I think, overwhelmingly wanted to see. There were a couple comments that we've incorporated into the plan, but just in terms of the skate park location, the pathways, parking lot, plaza, play area, it all consistently ranked #1. For each of those particular items. So what we'd like to do is share with you the updated park plan. And you'll notice, I think as part of your packet, we'll go into a little bit of detail tonight, is we both have a first phase, but also a second and subsequent future phase that we would envision for the park happening down the line. So this, I think, is very familiar in terms of how it matched the meander scheme. There are a couple little minor changes that I'd like to bring to your attention. We still have the parking lot coming off of both Scenic and Meinig Avenue. The plaza area that we had before, we have combined both the restroom and the shelter together to be a little bit more efficient and economical. The play area has been slightly enlarged. It's still nestled in that hillside, but I think one of the comments that we heard with the meander scheme compared to the other ones was, can you increase the size of the play area just slightly? We still have a 1/4 mile of looped paths. That was a question that was asked in terms of the distance. So 4 times around it, you hit a mile. And then, as you can see, the skate park and the pump track, this was the preferred location. So maybe, Maddie, you could just talk a little bit about those 2 items.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here in person. Was tired of presenting from my dining room, so thought I'd come out here and meet all of you guys. So yeah, this is the kind of final concept that our team put together based on community outreach and 3 concepts that we have presented in the past. So you'll see it's different than what you've seen because we really took pieces from each of those concepts. So while there was a preferred skate park, there were some elements out of the other concepts that the skaters wanted to see in this facility. So Nate, who's on the line, he worked closely with some of the skaters to really dial in what this final concept's going to look like. So you'll see kind of the south side of that skate park is more that street style skate park that we've talked about in the past. And then the north side has those bowls and transition style features. That bowl also can flow into what we call a beginner loop of the pump track. So it's a really nice just connection and transition between the bowl for the skaters and also a separate area for little kids that want maybe not as crowded of a place to learn how to ride their bike, learn how to ride a pump track. So then we have a nice big staging area in between the 2 pump tracks, which is great because that's where, you know, all the bikers are going to hang out and watch each other. And then you'll see the north side is more that advanced main track for older riders or more advanced kiddos. So that's kind of how we split everything up. We did leave some open space to the north of that pump track, just based on feedback that we got from the bike group. So they really wanted to see some flat area where they could work on like more mountain bike style skills, just work on some other things outside of the pump track. And then you'll see with our phase 2, kind of how we've incorporated more bike amenities within that space.
Yeah, and related to that, the number 8, which is that kind of hillside slope, which you have out there right now, but we made it a little bit more gradual. So we still retain that, which is really, I think, a perfect place to be able to sit out there and watch all the action with both the skate park and then also the pump track as well. I do want to mention that we also had a pre-application conference with city planning to talk more specifically about improvements along Meinig and Scenic. So I think, as we've mentioned before, along Meinig, we'll be doing quarter street improvements, which is essentially adding a curb. And then along Scenic, we'll be doing 3/4 street improvements, which will include a sidewalk curb on our side, enough room for 2 parking, both on the south side and the north side, and then 2 travel lanes. Essentially from curb to curb, we'll have a roadway along Scenic, which will tie in perfectly with our entrance there. So as Maddie alluded to, we felt that having a first phase is great, but I think we heard from council and also the public as well as to kind of how do we think beyond that? How do we make sure whatever we're proposing now doesn't preclude future additions to make this even a better park? So with the next slide, you'll see how we've expanded things to address that. And a number of things I'll start out, then turn it over to Maddie. Along the south side next to the existing city-owned building, which is currently Sandy Net, you'll see that we're showing a series of pathways. We certainly envision things happening on the south side of this campus. So we've begun to plan a series of pedestrian pathways, connections down to the park itself. Along the same lines, what you see in number 3 is the idea that there may be a shared trail that is similar to your future Sandy River Park Trail, which might be combined both pedestrians and bikes that can make their way and meander through this, that ultimately could connect with the pump track. Number 4 shows another picnic shelter, which we don't feel we can perhaps afford as part of the first phase, but it could happen at a later phase. And then you'll see the pump track and skate park expansion as well.
Yeah, so I think it's number one here. So that shows phase 2, which is really adding to that transition style of the skate park. So getting a nice snake run, some fun transitions in there. And then you'll see we've also connected that phase 2 onto the pump track. So there would actually be 2 connection points between both facilities. And then option 2, that is showing a future jump line. So the top view right now just kind of looks like a flat path, but it would actually be an intermediate and a more advanced jump line that has kickers and mounds that bikers can jump. So we're going to present the renderings on Thursday night of what the skate park and the pump track and the future, jump line will look like. So you'll be able to see that. Hopefully you guys can make it, and we'll put it online as well. So don't worry if you can't, but you'll really be able to get an understanding of, oh, it's not just a flat line. It's really playing with the elevation. There's some jumps in there. Same with the skate park. We're working on adding some really fun colors to tie into the river theme. We have some fish elements that we put into the skate park, like skatable art. So again, all of that you'll be able to see on Thursday and really get the full idea of what the skate park will look like once it's built.
Thanks. Well, before I go to the costs, if there's any questions or comments, we'd be happy to answer them. Then we can talk a little bit about the estimates.
On the rendering here in the lower left corner, it shows number 5. That trail seems to kind of go into the school district property. And I know if you look at the building to the left of that, just to the north of there is a public right-of-way that would give people public access to this park from Park Street. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering if that might not be either an additional or a better link that you could then just follow the contours over to that trail, because going through school property during school hours, yada, yada, they don't like that and they don't give us permission to do that. So, so that's one thing. And then the other question I kind of had, and I asked earlier, but if you could go to the slide that you had the meander before with the pump track, not phase 1, but the one you had there. So I kind of thought that was a really cool rendition of the pump track. And seems like, I get it's 20,000 and that's great. Bigger's better, but 20,000, we'll take that for now. And this seemed to have, I don't know what the linear feet, meters, whatever you measure it is, of the pump track in there. But comparing this part of the drawing to then now go to that, we've lost quite a bit of length from what I can tell. And I don't know if that's just kind of a simplified drawing and in fact it's, there's more there or what, but that was just something kind of, I thought it was a little bit concerning that I love that it's 20,000, but if we're going from, I don't know what a number is, if we're going for 300 meters long to, 150 meters, that's a concern. So just trying to figure out how to maximize that 20,000 square foot footprint in a way that meets the needs of the pump track folks, and I'm not a big pump track. I don't know what the exact facilities or, what that looks like, but I would imagine that, longer is better in most cases. So.
Yeah, no, great point. So both tracks are that 20,000 square foot size. So they are the same size. I think the split was just different in that kids track from the first rendering. You'll see the kids track actually looked a little bit longer and bigger. So this rendering, we actually put more square footage into the main track. But as far as square footage numbers, they're both very similar, that 20,000 square foot.
But again, it looks like most of the 20,000 square foot is grass in this rendition versus most of it being asphalt pump track routes in the first one. So just trying to kind of, and I get that this is just still conceptual, so I appreciate that, but I don't, I appreciate the footprint staying the same, but I just, again, it's that length, kind of doing the calculations of what we had before lengthwise and what we have now, not wanting to see that. I understand it might reduce a little bit, but I don't want to see huge cuts in it. But but otherwise, thrilled with the progress you guys have made. I know, the skate folks have been real vocal about what kind of facilities or, you know, features that they want to see. And I really appreciate y'all's patience. I love the fact that the playground's a little bit bigger too, and really excited about it. Is there any reason why the parking lot is kind of tilted like that? Is that a kind of a design thing, or?
But part of it is the grades along Scenic. And so we're trying to get that entrance down at a lower grade because it ramps up pretty quickly. So
what are the number of parking spots we have?
We have a total of 40 parking spaces there. And that is just a parking lot. So that doesn't count the on-street parking.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think a fair amount of the council will not be there on Thursday night because we have a conflict. Could you put those renderings out on the email to us and make sure we get those kind of things?
Yeah, and I think they're going to be posted on the website so that the community can provide their feedback for them as well.
I'd love to see those. Yeah. The other question I had was, in my mind, when I saw this a while back, was that the meander was going to be the first crack at how we can afford it. And I know we're going to talk about finances in a minute, but then the master plan, in my mind, was the ability to enlarge both the pump track and the skate park. And I know that skate park's substantially bigger in the master plan. Didn't sound like that's going on with the pump track.
So in this rendering, we did not enlarge the pump track. That's correct.
On the master plan.
Correct. So
Okay.
that is something we can look at, but we felt based on the feedback we received from the biker focus group, they love the pump track, but they wanted to see some other bike amenities, more mountain bike style amenities. So that's why we thought, well, let's play with the elevation and add some jump lines and just some other skill sets so that it's really a full bike park and more users can come in and engage.
Okay.
So it was really just based on the feedback that we received from them.
So you are enlarging it, but you're doing a variety of things. With the
Correct.
pump
We're just
track.
adding more elements.
Okay.
Mhm.
I misunderstood. All right, thank you. That's it.
Okay, so if there's not any other comments, are we ready to talk a little bit about?
Yes. So as part of your packet, what you see up on the screen is a preliminary estimate, both for phase one and then also the ultimate master plan. And just a note in terms of how we go about this, we've taken other parks which are similar in size, similar elements, and use that as a guide for many of these estimates. We've also made some assumptions. So for some things like utilities, we don't know exactly what the linear foot of piping that we're going to have. So we've made some general assumptions for that. Certainly we relied on ARC and their expertise in terms of square footages for the skate park and pump track. And then also estimating frontage improvements along Scenic and Minot. So right now, the total cost for those improvements, we're hovering right around $5.4 million. Of note, this does include an estimating contingency of 20%, and that may actually seem like a lot of money, but we know based on our experience that as these plans become more refined, that contingency gets lower and lower because we're adding that money into things that we are uncovering as part of the design process. So 5.4 for phase one. And then we've also taken a look at the future phases, which include many of the things that Maddie just described. And that is an additional 1.5 million. Now, certainly thinking about inflation and when those things might happen, certainly that needs to be added to this cost as well.
Yeah, and if there's
all for.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've talked about up until this point is potential available funding. And we've talked about the $3 million that was left over in cash from the original purchase of the community campus site, and then SDCs. And currently we had about $2 million in SDCs. So available funding for this project would have been for hard and soft costs, about $5 million, and thinking 4.5 million for construction possibly. And so this number right now is preliminary. We are going out for that grant. If we're fortunate enough to receive the grant, that means we'll be creatively trying to find $500,000, whether it's value engineering or other opportunities, potentially fundraising to offset some of those additional costs. And then with the phase 2 numbers, again, preliminary, but it's at about 1.5. And so again, just being creative and thinking of ways eventually down the road, do we go out for another grant for phase 2? And so where we're at with some of the preliminary numbers. I don't know if there's any questions we can answer about that.
I talked last time. First, go ahead.
No one's here, so you can just speak out of turn now.
All right. Point I brought up before when we first saw this, and keep bringing it up, that this, if you take the play area, the pump track, and the skate area, it's about $1.7 million of the 5.5 or so. I get the part about roads and parking and all the other infrastructure things we need to do, but and hoping that the value engineering things that everybody talks about, but knowing how public projects almost always over price because of different things that we don't realize. Just wondering if there's a way we might take a look at trying to push more towards the actual things that we're going to be doing there rather than all the other infrastructure things. It just seems like we're well over half of the prices. They're associated kinds of projects. So have you thought about not doing as much maybe? I know we have to do certain things with the roads and so on, but have you looked at any kind of slimming back and forth, or are you just kind of, this is it, throw it out on the table?
Well, this
let us
is,
shoot at it.
yeah, well, we've done a little bit of both. I think that we felt it was important to have a realistic estimate, or at least at this point, in what I think what the expectations are. I think that, you know, there's certainly a lot of money that goes into underground utilities, just general moving dirt around. I think everyone is surprised at how expensive those things are. So it all does add up. However, as Rochelle mentioned, there are things that when we think about value engineering items, we want to try to do it in such a way that it's not apparent. So maybe there's ways that we can slim down on the amount of earthwork, where we're being creative in terms of how we grade the site in order to kind of reduce that to make that work. So we make good choices up front in terms of how we can potentially reduce costs.
Okay, certainly, since we're short.
We haven't gotten into any specifics yet, but certainly as we move into the detailing, that will be on our mind.
Yeah. Since we're short anyway, even at the crack of the gun to go forward, seems like by the time we get to towards the end, we'll probably be looking for every penny we could find, my guess is. So finding a way to start that process earlier on than later on.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to change things early on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What about our SDC funds?
Of the current balance, yes. And as development comes in, we would be accruing additional SDCs.
One of the options I'll throw out is, you know, there's these road improvements and things like that, are, you know, sidewalks and road improvements, and even the utilities and stuff, are things we might want to consider using our other urban renewal money. You know, we have a lot more urban renewal money available, and using that other pot for those kind of infrastructure costs, and leaving the, you know, park facilities to spend the original $3 million seems like a fair assessment, especially when it's going to benefit. You know, that parking lot's going to be used by more than just the park, and so.
So Mayor, we agreed to double it.
I was gonna say, I left, I come back in, we're spending money. It's like, what happened?
That's what happens to go, man. A couple of questions, because it's kind of hard to visualize, you know, on paper. But I'm curious as to how this park stands relative. I've brought up this line of questioning before. How does it stand out relative to other parks in our 200-mile radius at its current at phase 1 and then phase 2? Does it? what are we building? How cool is it? Sell me.
Mhm.
Sell me on 5 or 7 million.
Well,
These guys got to speak for you.
No, there's public comment at our meeting.
Maddie did make a point in one of our previous meetings that this would be a one of a kind in the state of Oregon, I believe.
In the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the combined skate park pump track element is it's gonna be cool.
A showpiece.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
And how, you know, given Carl's point, you know, you're just paying an awful lot of dollars for infrastructure to get to that 5.5 with phase 1. You add another $1.5 million, brings it up to 7, plus the contingencies. How does that change? Going
Yeah.
back to the value that we're bringing to the park. What is that extra 1.5 million? Not that we have it in our back pocket, but what does it bring?
There's different elements that the phase 2 would bring in. For example, there would be some jump lines, which would have a different, still have the bikers that would show up. They'd use the pump track, but then they'd also be able to do the single track that would wind not only from the parking lot down to the pump track, but then there would be, you know, a soft surface trail and a single track that would wind down and connect with the Cedar Ridge Trail that we'll be constructing this summer. So you'll have the interconnectivity with all of Sandy Park. Which will be a major driver for people to stop to and from the mountain. They'll show up and session the pump track and with the skate park. And Maddie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they would put in some additional transition for second phase. And right now it's there's a lot of street element features, and then there'd be a transition, which is also a different, it caters to a different level of ability. And I think some of the older skaters really enjoy the transition because it's easier on their bones, and so that it would there's some different elements there with the second phase for sure. Yeah. Yep. So
You're an expert now.
right.
Yeah.
Clarification too, because this budget doesn't cover the trail from the existing community campus down to the river. But you're saying that's going into summer anyway under a separate set of funds or already accounted for?
Yeah, so that was a portion of fundraising for that park, and then we received a grant, and so that will be grant, and there'll be a little amount of SDCs that will match the construction of that trail.
So what we're seeing here includes all the way down to the river.
Yeah.
So
Yep. The trail will go in this summer, so that'll be done first, and then the construction of the phase 1 of the community campus will go in shortly after that. So.
And Rochelle, I'll just add one point. So that jump line that we're proposing, the numbers here are for an asphalt surface jump line. So that means it's an all season amenity. So typically dirt jump lines, if it's raining, you have to close the course because you'll ruin the track, because when it's wet in the dirt, it's just not a good mix. So with the asphalt, it doesn't matter. You can use it if it's wet out. The asphalt's got that grippy texture, so bikers can still use it. So that would be a huge benefit, because I don't know of many hard surface bike parks in the area. So that would get a lot of use.
Hesitate being the only one asking questions, but part of the advisory, I didn't mean to discount the councilman to the left or right. One thing you haven't really shown me just yet is, and this is a fairly inexpensive park to maintain. A lot of grass. You don't do much with the track that's there now. No roads, that particular thing. We put this infrastructure in here. There's going to be a fairly big jump in operations, maintenance, repairs, on and on and on. How is that identified in any kind of future budget? We're going to have to hire so many more people. We're going to have to hire special equipment, contractors. Like, just in my mind, I see a lot of stuff that is not just the construction of it. Where are we at?
Yeah, and to your point, right now staff is mowing it and they're maintaining a relatively, 10 acres of essentially grass. And so some of these amenities, yes, they'll have to be maintained, but there's currently some time spent there. Sure. Having conversations right now during the budget season with Jordan and talking about needs and priorities. And it's something that has been discussed as we're bringing more parks on, and what would that look like, and balancing it with all the additional needs and requests and goals of the council.
This is also timing wise with the construction and completion of the park, correct me if I'm wrong, will be at the end, like towards the end of the next biennium until it's fully complete and comes online. So there is a little bit of a lag where we do have some time through this budget process, but the next budget process, especially looking at our staffing and what we'll take for maintaining this. But you're right, that's a key point. Like this is a premier park. And we've even talked about volunteers being a part of that too, you know, keeping the pump track and skate park clean and, you know, off and all that stuff. But we're talking about a new playground, you're talking about a whole parking lot, you're talking about lots of trash receptacles, new bathroom, much more amenities than what's there currently.
What's the lifespan on the features that we're building into the skate park? And what's the asset lifespan that we plan on for this sort of investments?
Yeah, so skate parks, if they're well maintained, over 20 years. Asphalt pump tracks, we have tracks that are over 10 years old. So ARC actually invented the hard surface asphalt pump track. So I think our oldest track is that 10 to 15 years old and they're still in great shape. You know, we can do maintenance packages where every 5 to 7 years our crew comes in and inspects and patches anything that needs fixed. But yeah, I'd say, you know, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years minimum, I think. You know, play areas generally, new technologies and everything, you kind of cycle through those, but we see this as a long-term investment.
Any other?
Well, I talked too much during the, you know, the PAC meeting, so, you know, this is everybody else's time.
Ribbon cutting, that's next.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right.
Name it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great
Yeah.
job.
But before we leave this topic,
Yeah.
can we bring this up in urban renewal?
Yeah, no, I think that could be an opportunity.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. And nice to see you all in person, by the way. Yeah, thank you for traveling out here.
SDCs in roads and sidewalks too. Think about how that's.
Sorry.
I still have a few dollars. I'm gonna put a bunch of lights on, but that's gonna come down. We'll get the mayor to pay for it out of his own wages.
As long as he gets his bus.
All right.
My rope tow.
Okay. How is that? Can everyone see the slide deck?
Yep.
Perfect.
Ready for the next topic?
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
So Rochelle's going to walk through a few of these slides, kind of guide the conversation. This was an item the council requested to bring back on the agenda. And Rochelle, you know, did the nice staff report to kind of give the background. We had a series of meetings about the park system development charges and the fee in lieu coming out of the adoption of the Parks Master Plan last year, the update to the Parks Master Plan. And so she went back and kind of did a review of that, but also in spirit of the council's conversation about putting this back on the agenda, some options in there too, to kind of help guide the conversation tonight. And really what this came about was a concern over the fee increases and both on the fee in lieu, but also SDCs. And so we wanted to do another little dive into that, recap what the changes were, what those amounts were, and then kind of have a conversation at the work session for some guidance on if you want to see changes to either the fee in lieu or the SDCs that we can bring back as a package for the council's consideration.
Okay. Right. So I'll go through the slide deck fairly quickly, knowing that a lot of the history was in the staff report, and then just end with some staff recommendations and any questions that you might have about fee in lieu. But I'll just quickly review the timeline and the decision path, talk a little bit more about parks SDCs, speak to the fee in lieu of parkland dedication, provide staff recommendation, and then turn it over to the council for discussion and staff direction. So basically over a year, from September of 2021 all the way through September of 2022, staff worked with FCS to update our parks system development charges and fee in lieu. And we brought it before the Parks Board several different times, and then eventually to the council with a variety of different implementation plans, and council took what Parks Board had suggested. We tweaked it, brought it back September 6th, and then the council passed 3 different resolutions. One was the updated methodology, the fee in lieu, and then raising SDCs. So Parks fee in lieu is a one-time fee that actually supports the implementation of our newly adopted Parks and Trails Master Plan. And I just wanted to underscore there are 2 different types of fees, and there's a reimbursement fee and then an improvement fee. And the reimbursement fee can be used to basically reinvest back into our park system. So we can update Fantasy Forest at Meinig with it. We can take and maintain the Bornstead splash pad. And so any of those funds can be reinvested into our park system. The maximum SDC for reimbursement was $8,897. And that number weighed heavily in some of the decision making that the council had done as far as like to what level should we raise those SDCs. And then the second one is the improvement fee. Those are more restrictive, so those have to be used for capacity building. Now, a question was raised earlier, both of those fees can be used for, a reimbursement fee can be used for capacity building. So there's no restriction on that $8,897 that's currently the fee that we're assessing for SDCs.
Isn't that reimbursement based off excess capacity in existing investments that have already been made?
Yes, so correct.
So effectively what you're doing is for something we've already built and taxpayers have already paid for, developers are paying a portion of that in order to basically offset what has already been paid by the existing residents in prior construction, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And the other one is based off unmet needs, based off new people coming into the neighborhood, putting pressure on existing parks and services that are parks, so that we, in order to maintain the level of service at a park level, we would have to build out or expand or do something to continue to provide for them at the level we've been providing to the current citizens.
Yep, perfectly stated. That's exactly it.
And so if we didn't bring in enough money, we're just making the current residents pay more.
And the improvement is also all the new future parks.
Yes. And any SDC, yes, it's on future, it's a one-time fee on future development. Yep. That's invested back into our park system.
And we've set our reimbursement, we've set our park SDC to begin with that only includes the reimbursement part of that, which was kind of a aha moment for me. I'm sharing it with others because if I didn't understand it, I figured, you know, so that, you know, those 2 bullet statements that she's got there, reimbursement represents that $8,897. It does not include the improvement at this point. Now, as we increase it over time, in the, you know, that glide path that we had for 11 years, then we start picking up some of that improvement part of the thing, and that includes those, you know, future parks that are neighborhood parks that are going to be needed in when developments happen outside.
Right, and because reimbursement fees are less restrictive, you can also use them for capacity building and future level of service.
Right, but I mean, our reimbursement fee, we've identified that based on all the existing issues we already have that we need to fix. And if we use those reimbursement fees to go build a new park somewhere, then that means just even more the existing problems aren't getting fixed. So it's not like new money.
I disagree. I think the reimbursement is based off excess capacity that had already been purchased and built out.
What's that?
The reimbursement was based off excess capacity that had already been built out, not a list of
New
defective
parks.
things. Right.
No, it's not new parks. It's yeah, but
Right.
it's
So Mining Park, if it serves X number of people in whatever.
right.
Right. Okay. So
But our SDCs are only reflecting at this point just the reimbursement share of that.
Mhm.
We already, I mean, I'll get, yeah, go ahead.
If
I'll
there's a
bring that up
disagreement
later.
between councils, I guess I would look to staff and say, that's right.
So it's actually
Yes.
based on the amount of amenities and natural space and parks that we currently have. And so what it basically is saying is, do we have, like, for example, Sandy River, that amount of acreage bought back into our system for level of service. So therefore we qualified for a reimbursement fee because we're not only meeting our, we have to meet our current level of service so we can buy back into our system that we currently have, but we have a nexus of level of service that we have to provide as the community grows. And that's where the master plan was predicting future population of about 19,000. And so that's identifying our future parks, and that's the improvement portion of the SDC calculation.
Yep.
That, okay. Perfect. So park SDCs have not been raised since 2016. And the new rate went into effect January 1st. So just doing, just providing an illustration of what the old fees used to be. So in 2016 to 2022, it was $3,717. And then in January, it increased to $8,897, again, the maximum reimbursement. And then I also provided a calculation for duplexes. And then this fee is assessed at the issuance of a building permit. And one of the things to point out, we've got some really good data from the last 7.5 years when the city switched over to the new software. So this gives you a snapshot of how long at that $3,717, we were able to amass essentially $2 million. Our projected year end is going to be 1.7 million because we're currently spending out of that account for the community campus park project improvement. And we're projecting with potentially future development, looking at if we left our fee at the full rate of $8,897, in the next 2 years, we're roughly estimating about $2.5 million in SDCs. If that was cut in a quarter, it'd be 1.9 million. And if that fee was cut in half, it'd be 1.2 million. And then this just paints a picture where if we're looking at developing Deer Point the next year, how much money are we getting in for SDCs? SDCs are one of the most important fees to support of the development of our parks. So,
Can I clarification on that? The 2.572, is that just standalone in addition to the balance of 1.739?
it'd be standalone, yep.
I have a question about your forecasting in that we have definitely reduced the number of houses that we have sold this year, in fact, by easily a half. And those include the brand new houses, which all these SDCs are coming from. Although the prices have stabilized, I think of them as sagging. They aren't going down yet, but they're certainly sagging. I would suspect that that's going to be with us for a while. Inflation appears to be hanging on longer than people have been telling us they should, and interest rates and so on. So does that get affected in how you forecast?
Yeah, this was a pretty conservative rate based on some information that we actually ended up pulling for the budget projections that are coming up for the next, for our budget conversations. We're working with planning on projected development that's currently in the works, and so we did take a pretty conservative look at that.
On-site stuff that the developments that you figure will get through as you're forecasting, even though there may be some restrictions in sales as well as issues around how much they might be, because I suspect there might even be some dropping in prices.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm
These are
pretty sure,
these
but
are for
it's-
new
yeah,
builds.
it's
so.
only for new development.
You're not gonna, okay, all right,
Yeah.
but you're still
Yeah.
not gonna get the kind of increases we have in the last few years because of the demand for houses.
Can we ask if your projections are based on the same ones that we got from Kelly a week
Yes.
ago or so?
Is that right? Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
It helps.
I'll translate.
Keep me straight.
Okay, so then we'll move into fee and lieu, and fee and lieu is the funding mechanism that the department relies on for future land purchase. And the fee and lieu is governed by Sandy Municipal Code 178640. And basically, if a new residential subdivision, multifamily, manufactured home development, they're required to provide parkland dedication to serve the existing and future residents of these of the developments. And there is an option, instead of a dedication of parkland, to pay a fee in lieu. And the fee in lieu was established in 2004. And at that time, the cost per acre was $241,000. And so there roughly wasn't an increase, about 19 years since we raised it last time. And again, it seems like a large jump, but we haven't, raised the cost per acre in over 19 years. And the new rate, after FCS did their consultants and based on assessor data, that's not right, but it's close, was $869,000. And that is determined on undeveloped platted land. And so this slide just illustrates the old and the new fee. So in 2004 to 2022, again, cost per acre was $241,000. And starting September 7th, after the resolution was adopted, that new fee cost per acre was $869,000. When that's broken down, a resident from 2004 to 2012, that rate was $1,638. And per resident, that new fee is $5,911. And again, that's on new development only. So if we wanted to look at it from a single family dwelling or a duplex, from 2004 to 2022, that was $4,916. And in September, the new rate was $17,732. And again, I provided information on duplex rates there as well. And then this fee is assessed and would be paid prior to the approval of the final plat. So same illustration as the SDCs. So over the last 7.5 years, we were able to raise $1.2 million in fee in lieu, and that was at the $241,000 per acre. And projected revenue using the same information that was, again, provided by Kelly, over the next 2 years of the biennium, 2023 to 2025, at the full rate, we're projecting about $975,000. And then a quarter of that, if that is something the council decides to do, would realize about $731,000. And then if it was cut in half, it'd be $487,000 in fee in lieu. And so that is the quick overview of Parks SDCs and fee in lieu. And staff would like to make just a couple of recommendations for council's consideration. And the first one is around system development charges. And we just recommend that the council discuss and perhaps support the SDC fee in lieu of the maximum reimbursement of $8,897. And then originally the increases, there was going to be an additional increase in July where that was going to go up to about $10,500. Staff is recommending that the council, that we don't raise that fee in July, and potentially the council reevaluate that July of 2024. And then regarding the fee in lieu of parkland dedication, staff has provided 3 different options. One is to maintain the current fee in lieu of cost per acre of $869,000. Option 2 would be realizing a quarter reduction, which would equate to roughly $651,000. And then option 3 would be reducing that fee in half, which would equate to about $434,000 in fee in lieu. So with that, I'll
thank you.
over to the mayor.
Thank you for the report. Really appreciate it, Rochelle. I know a lot of work goes into the staff and especially on the recap. We'll go ahead and open up for discussion. Yeah.
Can you go back 2 slides for me? Sorry, Rochelle.
No, all right when she took it down.
More of that overview chart. I just want to make sure I understand what I saw.
Here,
It's the fee and lieu fees.
let me see this one here.
Second to last slide. Yeah, that one. So annually, that fee and lieu column is how much money was received from fee and lieu annually, right? So in 2016, 45,000. And then 2019 is a high point, 471,000. 2023, 36,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then a biennium forecast is almost $1 million on that at the new rate. Is that right?
Correct.
Split that in half, 500,000 a year.
Yep.
That's what it shows. Okay. All right. And then 2 more questions. The 869,242. That's the, and I wasn't on city council last year. I just started in January. So It went from 241 to 869. You said 241 was in 2004. What was the average cost per acre in 2004? And what was the average price per home in 2004 compared to today's prices? So I can look at what the marginal increase on those went up for developers.
Yeah, I actually don't have that information, but I'd be happy to follow up with that. Yeah.
It'd be good to know because,
Yeah.
I mean, just using a hypothetical situation, if that number doubled per acre and per home, then I would see SDCs doubling, making sense. But if the SDCs went up 5 times and homes only went up 20%, that just seems, to me in my lens, seemed a lot. But it's just, I need to have the facts, the numbers to support it. So
Yeah.
that would help you.
I don't know what the 4 was off the top of my head, but I can tell you that we had substantial increases in our prices for new homes from that, pick your 4, I guess, 2004 to this is past year. But you really got to know that in the last 6 to 9 months or so, it has really leveled off. Those increases that we were seeing just are not happening.
I have a pretty good guess just because I moved to Sandy in 2005 and bought my home here
Yeah.
in 2005.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I bought a house in 2017, so another one in Sandy. So I know that growth. I know it. I just want you to tell me community average, right? So it makes work.
Well, I know the
Financial
folks doing the
sense.
SDC stuff calculated that per acre of 241 back in 2004. And so they calculated it the same way they calculated it in 2022 at 897.
Yeah, it might make total sense. I just don't know.
And part of it, I think it was just the cost of the whole platted subdivision, whether the streets or whatever, includes all that. Can I have you put up that one slide that I was asking about, the one
FEMA
with
or
the bar
SDC?
charts?
Oh,
I like that one. That was a real eye-opener to me.
okay, give me a second. Sorry about that.
I tell you, this STC stuff, I mean, I know parks pretty well, but how to calculate SDCs is, worse than trying to figure out how the sausage is made. So, what she's going to put up was a slide that, if you remember back in September, we were looking at different kind of glide paths to look at and comparing our rates to other towns and all. And I think Lake Oswego was showed out there as at 15,000. And so we kind of settled on $8,900, like $8,900 as kind of, halfway to Lake Oswego. And I think what was kind of, I don't think I understood it completely, but looking at this slide here, what was a little bit surprising to me is that this is representing the current SDC that we have right now. And that's where, again, that starting at the reimbursement fee, we're only collecting for the reimbursement part of the calculation and not the new development part. And so with that, what we've done with that proposal and what we've already approved is down at the bottom, $26.5 million in delayed projects. And we call them delayed, but if they're not funded, they're unfunded mandates. And so they're unfunded projects that will likely never get done. And I asked Rochelle what percentage of 26.5 million is of all the projects in the Parks Master Plan. And she said it was almost half. So I just want everybody to understand here that the unanimously passed Parks Master Plan that we did that has all these great projects that we want to do in the next 25 years, we've already lopped off with the current SDCs that we have, half the collecting money for the half of the future projects out there. So that's really concerning me because I just feel like the whole water wastewater issue, coming deja vu here, that we haven't, that if we've already lopped off half of the projects and now we're talking about, lopping off more, we're not really supporting our Parks and Trails Master Plan. We're already not supporting it by half. So I'm really, this is our starting point right now. And to consider, and I get maybe giving a glide path to a couple developers that were far enough in the pipeline that they didn't expect this. And I get that. And I can, probably support something like that. But going beyond that and cutting off even more of the projects that we have in our plan means that that these future developments will not have parks and they will be looking to us to have them. And we will not have collected the money, which means it's going to come out of the existing residents. And I'm here to represent the city residents. I get that a couple developers are upset about this, understandably so, but I'm here to represent the residents who would otherwise end up having to pay for these future parks and upgrades to our existing parks too.
So I'm here as well to represent our current residents. And what's bothered me about this SDC conversation is how compartmentalized each one has been. That we're talking about parks in this one, then we talk about water infrastructure in another, and then we talk about wastewater infrastructure. Since 2019, we've raised sewer rates 165%. Since 2019, we've raised sewer rates 165%. We've raised sewer SDCs 234%. We've raised water rates 66%. We've raised water SDCs 26%. Now, later tonight in our meeting, we're going to be talking about the moratorium on building. When we talk about the different deals we need to do with our wastewater capacity in that project, we know the requirements and stress testing in the next facility that we're going to need to build. We know that we have demands that are not budgeted for, where we're going to have to return to rates. We know that we're going to have to return to system development charges to pay for water and wastewater infrastructure. And I'm a lot more awake and attentive during the parks conversations, Parks and Rec, than I am during the water and wastewater ones. I get it. Like, those are the projects that allow us to dream. They're the ones that get us excited. They're the ones that make our community happy. Not necessarily the sewer and the water infrastructure ones. And I believe that we do have room in our SDC. To Rochelle's point earlier, I think it was 16 years till we raised this one. A big reason these percentages are so big is because of the lack of previous council action in raising water and wastewater SDCs before. But I also believe that there's critical mass, that we're only going to be able to get to us. We can only raise SDCs so high. You can only the market's only going to allow us to raise them so much higher. And when we know, and we got to prioritize when we collect these SDCs, knowing that if we don't collect the SDCs, we're going to have to turn around and put them on our ratepayers. It's one or the other. We're either going to get it from new development, or we're going to have to put it on the back of our current citizens. I want to get as much as that money, like everybody else, from future development than on the backs of our current neighbors. And so where I'm going to be more comfortable talking about all of these SDCs is if we can have a holistic conversation about how high this commission, this council feels we can raise the SDC in totality. And once we have a better feel for what that is, then let's divvy it up based on our priorities that we know we're under the gun on. Because I'll tell you, especially when we're doing extreme measures like moratoriums, talking about extending moratoriums, those are a lot harder than not building a park. And I want new parks. I want new recreation. I got a 10-year-old and 8-year-old at home. Actually, my 12-year-old's gonna be really mad I said that. I got a 12-year-old at home. I want parks and recreation, but I also know the extreme circumstances that our community is under, unlike any other neighboring community, quite frankly. It's not fair. But I think we got to prioritize these things too. And I have a hard time saying that we need to be raising to the amount we have of our SDCs for parks, knowing what more is coming in the way of SDCs for water and wastewater infrastructure and where those land on my priority list versus parks and recreation. Tom.
I actually agree with a lot of what you said there, but I'm going to differ a little bit on a couple of points. One is going back to Councilor Mayton's, how much have things gone up since 2004? Just quick Google says maybe tripled, 2000 to 2020. So we're probably in that range, which probably is close for the math. I'm sure they did a much more expensive calculation that we paid for dearly. But what that means is that every developer who got their stuff in and done between when that first value was set and the most recent one got a bargain. And on the backs of that bargain are the fact that we don't have as much land or money sitting in there as we could have had they been paying their fair share all along. And so to me, SDCs are about fair share, because if we kick that can, and honestly, that's what happened. Earlier councils kicked that can down the road. And then we're sitting here with having to decide we're short $1.5 million to do a really cool park because 10 councils ago, they didn't raise the rates they should have. And that's what I don't want to leave for the next generation. So I know the timing sucks, and I agree with you on time. You and I talked offline, and I think combining all of our SDC increments, updates into a single council so we can look at them holistically and do some better trade-offs. I'm all for that. That's not how it was presented to me, so I had to vote on the individual issue, which is I don't want to kick this can anymore.
So I think the last time this thing was presented, I was very against raising the STCs and Parks and Recreation so much at this one time, because there is a perception of how much we are going to whittle away at you got to keep some of this in mind, that profit from developers pays for all of the expenses that we're talking about in STCs. If you don't have those monies, they aren't making money, they aren't going to be building houses. So in fact, if you look at the last worth of statistics, we typically sell between 200 and 300 houses, and somewhere around half to a little less than half of that is new houses. In the since middle of last summer, we sold about 40 new houses, really dropped it. And it's because of inflation, it's because of the moratorium, it's because of the interest rates, and you can name all your other reasons, uncertainty and so on. And at that time when we were making this argument, I remember us talking about the fact that some of these houses, and it was true that they were being bid up $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 because of the need for those houses, and buyers were willing to do that. Today, we just finished a sale, and I won't go into the details because of some privacy things, but the seller paid $20,000 to the buyer, and it's not a one time, it's more than a few times. I've heard this from other offices, to be able to allow that buyer to be able to afford that brand new house. So instead of the buyers coming in now before $50,000 overpriced because they feel like they need to have the house, now the things have swapped around to almost the opposite, where we're seeing sellers paying money to be able to get those buyers to be able to afford these houses for all the reasons I just listed. So the market has certainly changed a lot. And for me, that makes a marketability, it makes, that's part of my current career and my way I do business. So like it or not, the world is part of business and part of economics. So we need to make sure these houses are affordable. Secondly, I agree with a lot of what Don and the mayor has said about the need to be able to look at the entire big picture. The only thing I would disagree with is you missed stormwater. Sorry about that. I got to bring it in. So there are reasons to look at all that. And if we do a similar strategy towards these others, and we know we need a lot more money to maintain the moratorium, pull us through that. Boy, I just feel like we are making our developers at a point where they will not want to come here. They will not be nearly as affordable, and maybe some of the housing things that we would love to see. And I want to see parks here. I want to see good quality parks that are well maintained. This property that we're looking at behind the old Cedar Ridge, the community campus, I really want to see that, in my opinion, maxed out. I want to see the bigger alternatives, but not on the backs of the fact that we can't afford it. We've got to find a way to balance the whole budget. So for me, I really struggle with the amount of increases that we've had with Parks and Recreation SDCs, especially when I started looking at the other needs. And the last final one, goes a little bit against some of the things that I just brought up in that, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we were going to look at these SDCs after a period of about a year or so.
Every year.
I thought that's what we were going to do. It's been 6 months, September to March. It may be a bit early to kind of see what those impacts are on buyers. We have so many variables right now. And I don't want to defeat my own argument I just made, but we may want to kick this a little bit around before we say this is really not as good a deal as we think it's not a good deal, at least from my perspective. So those two things are on my head at the moment.
I don't know if there is a good time to raise fees. But I think we're there. I think 2014 was 2007, whatever it was long enough ago that that's what we're got to remember. We're just catching up. To Don's point, they got a bargain. $52 million is what's in the. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's about $52 million of parks improvement plans in the parks master plan. Correct. I haven't heard, like I'm all for getting to a more equitable amount, but I haven't heard a plan to pay for that.
Right.
And until we come up with a plan, this was a plan that we paid consultants, I don't know how much, but close to 6 digits to come up with. And this was the plan that the experts are saying are working.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we, as much as it is a burden, I think we got to remember we're following the people that are the experts in this. And I think we still came in under half of what we could have went to. That's the second thing is the housing market in Sandy has changed even since I've lived here. You're not seeing the single family homes going up. We're hearing, coming before us and planning commission, if I'm right or wrong, is multifamily housing. That these parks are going to be key to those kind of living environments as we move forward. And we have to, I agree, wastewater is important. So is water. It's all important. But no one's going to want to live in a town that is just wall-to-wall apartments with no parks or any kind of infrastructure there. As we increase our capacity, we take our lots and we're forced to put more and more onto those. We need this more and more. And then this $9,000. I mean, I purchased multiple homes in my life. $9,000 is a hit, but again, it's not going to change the market value of this house. And then we have to have toilets that flush, and it's because of the new houses that are coming in. If we were to keep a moratorium, our sewer system's fine, our water system's fine, our park system's arguably okay. I mean, great to have pump track, but it's arguably okay. It's because of all the future stuff that we have coming is why we have to do this. And that's why this fee is super important. When another expert can come up, someone that's got degrees and smarter than Rick Sheldon on this, on how to pay for $52 million in projects, how to reduce cost of development, I'm all for it. But until then, I just don't know how we pay for all of that and keep Sandy a good community that people are going to want to live in as we develop more multifamily housing.
Thanks. I didn't give any opinions last time. I just asked a couple of questions, so I'll give some.
You want in?
So I'm not opposed to any increase in the fee because I understand from 2004 to today, there's a cost change. And I understand that Sandy has a vision for the future and we need to pay for that. That's not the reason why I asked for this to be brought back up. As a new city council member, one of the things I vowed to do was to bring improvement to the city and bring transparency. And I felt, especially during my campaign and afterwards, the number of calls I received that talked about the hiddenness of certain projects within the city and what they felt. I said, well, I'll bring that up and talk about it. And one of my first calls when I got on the council was about SDCs for the change. And what can you do about it? I said, nothing. I don't know anything. Let me look. And so I looked and I asked, called Jordan, and I'm doing all the research. And you're right, we paid a lot of money to experts to tell us what to do. I got it. But then there's also the eye test. You look at something and does it look right? Does it seem right? Maybe at the end of the day of this, it's only been 6 months. Maybe it does look right. Maybe that number doesn't change at all. I don't know. I'm just asking. Let's look at it. And then probably more importantly is Kathleen said something earlier. You said the pathway. What about all the people that were on the pathway to get it, building a project, that were on the path when this change happened, that didn't plan for that? We talked about a 20% contingency in the park budget. And they said, well, that contingency is probably not going to be, it's going to be used and then some. Builders, developers, buyers plan to buy something up front in advance and how much they're going to spend. And if the price changes in the middle, it's going to change their output. So I'm asking this council to revisit it and look at it and see if there's a change that can be made to benefit the existing people that were on that pathway. Whether or not it changes the outcome for future, I don't know. I asked some really simple questions. Don, to your point, if it went up 3 times, well, the rate went up 3.6 times. So that's a 17% increase. Is that equitable? Reasonable? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if that number was accurate or not. I'm just saying that's the difference between it. And I use a pragmatic approach and a logical approach to looking at things. And as I sit here for the citizens of Sandy, I've lived in Sandy for 15, 17 years now, raised my children here. I would pay more for the park my kids are going to play in. I'm going to go walk in as a resident. I would pay more for that. More than I want to pay more for a sewer.
That's right.
But I do pay for
Here,
the
here.
sewer, right? I will pay, but I don't want to have to burden the cost. So I do believe the developers of the future pay for that, for those projects in the future. I'm just asking us to look at the weight measures of that and say how much, and think about that as we make a decision to when we revisit this SDC, whether it's next month or in 6 months from now. Let's talk about that. And as a new council member, I wanted you to know where I was coming from and why I asked to put this on the table today.
I have a question there. Do you know when we'll have or this is for you or Jordan, do you know when we'll know the new SDCs for both water and wastewater? Based on this future
When we'll be-
wastewater
We'll
plan?
be revisiting them.
Well, you know, they're gonna finish this wastewater addendum amendment, whatever it's called. And that's gonna determine new costs for that, and then that's going to then, you know.
Then we're gonna have to
SDCs.
reproject out
Right,
and the
yeah.
whole deal.
Right.
And when does
Yeah.
that happen?
That probably won't be until next winter because the facility plan amendment will carry us through. We'll go through until the end of the summer into fall. And then once we plug those numbers into the methodology is probably when we'll get a new charge. I don't think the wastewater one's going to change dramatically just because the type of projects we're doing are expanding capacity and in the same way as the amounts, right? The different strategies that we're going to use. Water, again, may not increase dramatically, but it would change. And so when you adopt the water master plan, that's when we could start that effort to look at the SDC for that one. And then transportation, like I think I've said before, is very similar to parks, where you're going to have a list of projects and you already know we have a constrained list, right? And the only way to move that more projects into the unconstrained list, the funded list, is to look at ways of funding it, which could be SDCs, you know, other revenue sources, obviously. But we do in our code have the ability to do the, you know, indexing with the construction cost index. And that, you know, the last couple of years has been very large as, you know, those costs have increased. But I think historically it's probably closer to 5 to 7%. So you have to take that into account that every year we're updating SDCs just to keep it, you know, up to pace with the rising costs to actually build these things. Structure.
Well, I asked because I can appreciate your comments, Mayor, about, you know, wanting to look at all the picture, but I'm just kind of, you know, trying to figure out
How and when can we do that?
Yeah, when are we going to have
Yeah.
that? And that's the time to kind of look
Yeah.
at the whole thing.
So with that, one is I'd say, you know, we still don't have an adopted, we don't know what we're doing for the big facility for wastewater yet. And so that's going to dictate a lot of where we got to go pay for that once we do know that. So to feel like wastewater SDCs are not going to be moving, whether it's this year or in the coming years, I think it's a little bit unrealistic. Rochelle, can you put back up the staff recommendation part? I think it can help guide our conversation a little bit here.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
Go ahead, Don.
I was just going to point out, one thing we haven't talked about that was important in the original discussion is how did our resulting fees stack up with the neighborhood and other communities?
Yeah.
And they were right in the middle. So as high and as terrible as they feel right now, they are not exorbitant relative to everyone else. So when we have conversations about, will people want to build here? To me, that relativism to everyone else around us is very important.
So are you talking holistically or just as far as parks go?
Well, we looked at it as far as parks, but
Right.
in general, I agree with it holistically as well.
Well, that from when my individual offline conversations with staff, is I do worry that the proper expectation has not been set for council on exactly where we're going to rank at the end of the day against our peers on what we're charging both as far as rates and SDCs go. There's an indicator we will be in the top tier
For park?
for all holistically.
Oh, for everything. Yeah.
For everything, for parks, just when these folks are paying their SDCs, right? They're not worried about parks or waterway. They're just having to pay their SDCs, right? So just real quick, just to kind of, and then I'll go to you, Rich. It's just to kind of get to where you were going, Kathleen. So on the staff recommendation was to continue to support the current SDC fee of that, and staff recommends no increase on the July 1st, 2023 with the reevaluation on July 1st, 2024. What I would ask this council is, and we don't have to then go to July 1st of 2024, but as a compromise, what I would ask this council to do is to hold off on an increase until we're able to have that holistic conversation in, it sounds like, the winter of 2024, 2023, 2024, however it lands in the winter. Allow us to have that conversation to lead into a reevaluation. Now, the reevaluation doesn't need to be on July. We don't have to wait till July 1st. Right. We can do that somewhere between.
We just need all the data.
I just want us to have time to have all the data, to be able to do that. Well, what's that? Rich wanted in, and then I'll go to you, Carl.
Yeah, I have to that point a little bit. So I want to make sure I understand. Are you proposing that we go back down to 2000?
No, I'm suggesting that we hold.
Hold. Okay. So to Councilor Mayton's point, moving goalposts, I understand are challenging. What would it be incorrect for us for the ones that are in the pipe, to honor our what they went into with the couple $1,000s with the expectation of all the new stuff coming down, that be where it's at? I mean, we're at that point, we're not talking crazy amounts of money. What we're talking about is large amounts of money over the next 15, 20 years. This little drop in the bucket isn't going to be a huge impact. Is there something illegal and moral wrong about doing that?
I'll just add on to that. I could see it for the fee in lieu of, which did see a big jump since it's been so many years since we did it. I could see doing a glide path for a certain part of the pipeline, not the whole, because I think we got 600 in our pipeline, but the folks at the end of the pipeline for the fee in lieu of doing a glide path there that, recognizes the changed circumstances for the fee in lieu of.
Can we ask legal if you can go back? I mean, we've been with this new rate for a few months. Is it even legal for us to?
Well, George, do you have a feel for that? I mean, you saw this coming a little bit, I think.
There's not a whole, I don't think there's a whole that have been a lot that's been issued. So if you're talking about reimbursing, I think the council could do a policy and give direction to, if you're going to roll back the rate or freeze the rate or draw a line, applications that have been received prior to the date of this being the fee increasing, then, or since the fee was increased to now or something, right? Then we can, look at reimbursing, but where do you draw the line on projects that are, maybe it got their land use approval, but haven't submitted for building permits.
I mean, at some point in that pipeline, I agree, but that's moving the goalposts on somebody isn't exactly.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to kind of get Kelly to kind of tell us what are the different options for, what did you call it, Chris, the flip point or the set point, or
Yeah, I mean, to Rich's point, I think that goalpost moving becomes a bigger problem for us.
Yeah.
I kind of,
Yeah.
as you said it, I kind of advocate for, if this is the date we changed it, this is the date it went public, anything after that, fine. We leave it at that, don't worry about it. But everything from that day prior, if there was an application put in, that's what I'm talking about, the path. Now you're talking about moving a goalpost about winners and losers through there. I'm like, forget it. Just take all those people and say, okay, you came into it expecting to pay this, you're going to pay this. Now everybody who came in on this day after expected to pay this because this is what city council passed, let them pay that.
Is that
Now,
an approved plat?
But
Are you
that's
talking an approved plat or something before approved?
anybody that's put in an application.
It doesn't really
That's been
matter.
approved by the city.
The changes that you put in, we're talking about moving people back and forth in business. It's not so much the fact that things get more expensive, it's the confusion that comes from making changes, the goalpost thing you're talking about. And nobody would say, well, I would refuse to have you change the goalpost and give me more money back. People would, not very logical conversation, but it's the movement back and forth. So we're talking about nailing some people for a certain amount, moving some other people to a different amount, maybe moving people we nailed, is that the right word, charged, maybe the better word, back in September, a different amount. That really drives business people crazy to see all those changes. We already have so many changes going on in our planning laws, our rules, the things that we do to analyze how developments get on the table. It's just horrendously confusing. And that's where people get this impression that it's so difficult to work for a certain city because we move this goalpost back and forth. So in my mind, we're kind of there. I like the idea of kind of letting us go for a year, midsummer, winter, whatever that might be, from staff can get back to us. Look at what those impacts are. And I get the part, I just argue for the fact that these numbers are, irregardless of what people say, are important enough that they do impact people. And it's not always just the amount, sometimes it's the increases. So we're doubling it. That sends a message to a lot of developers, doubling it, tripling it. Those are kind of things that people really look at when they decide, are we going to make a development here in Sandy? I'm aware of some of the smaller guys that were able to talk about putting things into place in the Sandy by getting the planning, getting into those hookups that are legally ability for them to move forward on a project because they can satisfy the moratorium. And it's a difficult process to get that thing done. I'm aware of a guy that's been on the plate for 4 years now. And 3 of them was before this moratorium started. And now the moratorium has put so much confusion and frustration that it does make a problem with people just coming to the table. So in my mind, let's take a big deep breath. Let's not jump back to the process of changing things around. Let's give it a chance to see where we are, find out what happens.
Jordan.
Mayor, I was going to say, I think the bigger issue and the calls I've received is the fee in lieu. That was the bigger jump. That we're talking $12,000, $13,000 per unit that it went up. And I think embedded in that issue is that you have the issue of coming in and applying for a duplex instead of a single family home once it's been platted, right? So then you double that. So it's a substantial increase from projecting that you pay $5,000 in your financials for that lot to $35,000 on the fee. That's I think that's much harder for them to stomach than an SDC increase that happened. They see this in every city. SDCs go up, methodologies change. I think they understand that to some level. And yeah, it jumped $5,000, but other fees did increase too, and it's comparable to other communities. But the fee in lieu portion, especially when you're not dedicating parkland, and so now you're coming in after you've already went through your land use entitlements and you're paying another fee to the city, and that fee went from $4,000, $5,000 to $17,000. It's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to write that check when I got this land use.
So Jordan, to Chris's suggestion, with having a date certain, which I think best suggestion I've heard was the date we basically voted this in or that it took effect. Is there a way of dividing up creating a policy that divides up the applications that were in the door at that point versus ones that came in after.
Aren't there 600 of them though?
But
It's a big list.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get a feel for.
And the other
Well,
point,
hold on, let me get an answer.
sorry.
That's fine.
I think it's the difference when you pay the fee in lieu, though, is that for some of these projects that they're now coming in with duplexes, they're paying that increase in fee in lieu now, even though because there is other projects that have land use approvals, they not pull permits for another year or two.
Sure.
Right. And so you don't want to,
Sure.
I mean, they have had ample time by then to know for the increase.
Sorry, Don.
I was just going to say, part of Kelly's discussion in the last few weeks has been how long some of these projects
Some of them
take
were sitting a
to
while.
get through. So it's hard to say what in the pipeline means sometimes.
Some are so complex that it's hard to
I
tell.
don't see anybody arguing the first part of getting back to the staff recommendations.
Yeah, I don't.
Keeping the current SDC, right,
Mhm,
and making no increase,
mhm.
revisiting in July.
And I hope staff's hearing holistically.
Right. Hopefully it's July, right? We want to see all of them together, right? And nobody here is saying that's a bad
Let's be
idea.
honest, if we're gonna reevaluate, we need to do it before July because we're going into another election cycle. And that's a bad time to raise.
Oh,
those
sure.
concerns. Nobody wants.
But
to,
I expect
so-
winter. Yeah.
So yeah.
And we'll
Q1
have the additional
timeframe.
data. when we-
And then on there, I'm creating the asterisk for that date certain for people who are already in the pipeline. I don't know what that is, but that's kind of an asterisk there. And then the next part of that, I think, is mostly applied to that fee and lieu side, because that's where most of my argument was at. I mean, that's a massive increase, at least from my optic test. And I want parks too, but I also want to be equitable. And I don't have enough data to support that increase yet.
Right.
But I know that I got work to do
Yeah.
to look at that. So I'm okay with keeping it as it sits. I'm just more curious, is there any way to protect the people that were in the pipeline already? And I'm hearing you, I haven't heard of you say we couldn't. It just would be having to pick the people that already had permits pulled.
Pick your winners and losers.
Yeah, and that's
Well,
the
Keep it fair. There's a lot of people thinking that sometimes when we start doing winners and losers, that there are some who are preferred over others. And pretty soon, if you're looking at making some changes for some and other changes for others and none for even more, you really create some distrust within the community. You start creating some confusion, even within our own laws and rules. How do you know all that happen? I really advocate for it. Let's not make it more complex. Let's try to see where we stand and give it some time. Let's make changes holistically and in a timely, educated.
Well, let's get some of those answers back, and let's look at revisiting in a shorter conversation, the fee and lieu conversation at a future meeting.
Yeah, and we'll try to find where we can place that goalpost or.
I don't know.
Plan
I don't know if there is a
development.
spot. I'm just asking if there is.
I think, again, development like certainty, right? So if the council, if we can move ahead and come back with, some options or an option kind of like what the council's talking about. I think it's not just for the projects that already have submitted or, paid this fee or like, oh, this is a lot or, are waiting. There's some projects that are waiting to know when is the fee going to be.
Right.
The council's having this conversation. I got this permit, but I'm not going to turn it in until I know what I might have to pay. So if we can, create certainty on what developers can expect, I think will help. So we'll move this along fast.
Okay, appreciate it. All right, with that, let's break for 5 minutes and come back and have our meeting. All right, I'm going to start the city council meeting. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everybody. So in tonight's city council meeting, our agenda will flow as follows. I will call for any changes to tonight's agenda. We'll then go into public comment. We have a lot of folks here who want to speak about the Sandy Community Campus and the pump track and the skate park. That will be the appropriate time for that. I also have a couple of submittals to talk about the SDCs and then kind of slash the moratorium. So public comment will be the time to talk about the SDCs. And then when we get into the public hearing for the moratorium, we'll have a public comment portion for the moratorium portion of your testimony. After public comment, we will then go to our consent agenda, which has our city council meeting minutes from our March 6th meeting, resolution authorizing application for a grant for the community campus park, adoption of the 2023-25 Sandy City Council goals, and a contract amendment for the 362nd and Bell Street improvement projects. Under resolutions tonight, we'll have that public hearing on the extension of the moratorium on development. Under new business, Rochelle will be talking to us about a policy for naming or changing names of parks, trails, and recreation facilities. We'll then wrap up this evening with the report from our city manager, as well as committee and council reports. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilor Mayton.
Present.
Councilor Smallwood.
She's excused.
Councilor Sheldon.
Here.
Councilor Walker.
Here.
Councilor Exner.
Here.
Councilor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here, I will now call on any proposed changes to tonight's agenda. Hearing none, we'll move forward to public comment. Please note again, this is your opportunity to comment on opportunity to comment on the proposed moratorium extension will occur during the public hearing later in this agenda. I do have an individual that submitted online that goes by the name of Adam Nilsson. Is he available online, Jeff?
Just looking for any raised hands, Mayor.
It does say he'll be using, it says my telephone.
And there are no telephone callers currently logged on there.
All right. I will come back to you at the end of public comment to see if he is still there. With that, Mac Evans, would you like to talk on the SDCs?
Hello, Mac Even. My address is 5360 Southeast Chase Road in Gresham. A lot of you know me. I'm a builder, developer in the community, and I have several projects going. And while I understand the need for SDCs and fee in lieu to pay for infrastructure and development and things like that, I'm looking through the material provided. I was looking online, and you look at the cost of a single family home with these increases, and just the system development charges, from what I can see, when you take the fee in lieu and you take the system development charges, you're looking at $26,000+ for a single family home. And that's before they go up all the way. City Manager Jordan mentioned that it was $12,000 or $13,000 per door in the fee in lieu, but that doesn't include the fact that the developer already paid the first half of the fee in lieu ahead of time, because the developer pays for half of it when they record their plat, and then the other half goes onto the house plus 10%, unless the developer pays for all of it up front. So that number of $12,000 or $13,000, that's half of what the cost is. That's just what you pay at the permit, when you get your permit issued. So, like you were saying, when you take all the increases of the system development charges and you add all these up, a duplex and my math might be off a little bit on this, but you're going to be looking at over $53,000 for parks for a duplex. When you add the other system development charges and everything else on that, once this goes into full effect, you're going to be spending over $100,000 to build 2 units. And then I haven't heard anything. I know there's a scaled down calculation, but what is this going to do for apartments? This is going to wipe out middle housing. It will eventually, it'll probably catch up just like you were saying, what was it in 94 home sale prices, and they go up, and but it's not a direct dollar for dollar expense. We have increased lumber costs. Now they're down, but the cost of pipe is up dramatically. The cost of roofing, the cost of windows, anything petroleum based is through the roof right now. And so all those costs change over time, but it all goes in to the final end product that this residents of the city of Sandy end up buying. And then the new people that are moving into this community that want to live here because it is such a great place won't be able to afford it.
20 seconds, Mr.
With that, I'd like to thank you for at least considering the idea of making some adjustments to this and looking at it holistically, because I do think it definitely needs to be looked at holistically, because everything goes to the overall cost of home construction and livability. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, the next is Jim Ray's.
Council, my name is Jim Rays. I'm 4020 Northeast 216th in Fairview. Local home builder. I think most of you guys recognize my face. I'm really kind of coming with some of the same positions as Mac. I'm here specifically honing in on some of these SDCs and costs regarding duplexes. Correct me if I'm wrong. House Bill 2001, the intent of that code was to create affordable housing. I hold in my hand a permit that I've already paid for that I'm building right now, and this is last year's fees, $69,500 for a building permit for one duplex. That's last year, not today. That doesn't account electrical permits for the county still. The cost of the single family homes that I'm building in the same neighborhood are $27,000. I'm confused. You look at all of the fees, the SDC fees that are doubled: water, parks, sewer, street, and storm. Why is it council's position that I would need to pay double, say, for water? I have one water meter and I pay for all the water that goes through that meter. Whether I have 5 meters and use the same amount of water, my bill is the same. I have one sewer lateral to the unit, but I have to pay for 2. A comment with planning director that's not present was council's opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, was there's going to be more people living there. So it was council's opinion we would double all the SDC fees. I question honestly if that's even a legitimate right. I don't know this, but how is it council's knowledge or opinion to know how many people are going to live in a duplex? I own multiple of them, and some of them are 3 bedrooms with 1 tenant. So this understanding that more people are there, so we're putting more stress on the system, makes no sense to me. And I mean, any input would be great. I don't understand where the doubling of all these SDCs came from. You mentioned affordability. If we've done your math, we're more than every city in town. Everyone. You can't find a duplex that would cost this much, and I would challenge council to show that to us. So I appreciate you considering the reduction. This is going to chase the SDC money that you all need for the projects to keep the city the way it is. You have so many repairs to do without us. Where's that money come from? So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. All right, next up is Joseph Oshman. Reminder to state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Oshman. I live in Northeast Portland, 5245 Northeast Roselawn Street, Portland, Oregon. Thank you for your time and consideration. I come to you as a small business owner in Portland, Oregon. I manufacture American-made bike racks. I employ up to about 10 people. Just in another bike trail meeting, I heard somebody through the grapevine say that Sandy was looking to become a destination rather than a drive-through town in regards to cycling. I'd like to point out that Portland, Oregon has Gateway Green. And I mean, it's a start, and it's in a kind of crummy spot. It's hard for families to get to. They put a lot of money into it. I don't think it was managed the best it could have been. But that's why I'm hopeful that Sandy could do something better than that with the right people on board. Somebody mentioned to be a showpiece. I think that could be easily obtained if you have like the right people on the design or have an input from the community, which sounds like has happened and that is happening. I mean, it's like anything else where if you have a room full of suits, design something, it might lack the soul. No offense to anybody here. Or anybody back there.
Chris, get that jacket off, brother.
It looks good, by the way. You got that. You got more tattoos than me. Anyway, yeah, I'm just hopeful that you make a showpiece and it's not just like another city doing an average skate park. That's just another checkbox that nobody's gonna drive here to ride. It's like just go big or go home kind of thing. Like do something notable. If it's another checkbox on a PowerPoint presentation, we'll hit it once or twice, and then everybody else is going to keep driving to Sandy Ridge or something. So they mentioned a paved jump line, and I think that's absolutely critical. I've seen there's hundreds of examples of like other kind of pump tracks that are just dirt, and if you don't have a paid staff to maintain that, you might as well just plow right away because it's going to be a mess and just a burden for the city, unless you have a paid staff to maintain it. If you pave it, it's going to be something more of a destination piece and worth everybody's time. So with that, I thank you for your time and consideration, and best luck.
Thank you so much. Don Robertson. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Don Robertson, 38412 Juniper Street, and proud homeowner of a raised built home here in Sandy. Anyway, I came originally tonight to talk a little bit about SDCs, but given the discussion I heard, I think I'm going to kind of keep my powder dry because it sounds like we'll be having this discussion coming up in the future. Not that distant future at that, but anyway, what I really wanted to talk about was my excitement for the new park over at the community campus. I have been fortunate enough to participate in the design portions of it. As most of you know, I do have a bit of a background in this area, and I'm very excited to see what's going up. I don't think it's going to be a box that is being checked off. I think that we are making a wonderful facility that is scaled beyond our community to be able to get people to stop and be able to get people to come and spend some time in Sandy. And I think that that is an important economic driver for our community. I also think that when we talk about this park, we talk about doing it in potentially 2 phases because of expenditures. Getting the grant is going to be critical. And I am very excited to throw my 2 cents in with Rochelle to help in any way I can to make sure that we have the best opportunities to receive grant funding with that. But remember, a phase 1 grant does not preclude a phase 2 grant either. So with the successful completion of that phase 1 grant, I would anticipate being able to go back out and get a phase 2 grant for that second part of it. All that said, it is contingent on making sure that we are showing good faith effort in moving that project along in as expedient way as possible. That also includes building up our capital to be able to match that grant. When I talk about matching the grant, I don't mean the minimal matches, but a match that is substantially more than what that is, because that will up our chances of being able to receive those kinds of grants. So with that, I want to thank you very much for the opportunities. I'm really excited about what's going on. I look forward to watching this all unfold.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Robbie Walters. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
My name's Robert Walters, live at 38100 Sandy Heights Street in Sandy. I'm a small business owner here in Sandy. I run a mountain bike coaching business, primarily at Sandy Ridge, and I'm absolutely thrilled by what's going on with the new campus development and skate park. I love that there's different phases and that we're addressing different groups who are going to use the park. And I would encourage the council, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Oregon grant that we're applying for, we are leaving a little bit on the table there. I think the grant, the maximum amount is 750. And I would urge everyone to apply for the full amount so that we have the resources we need to really make this park something special. Because it is a really great opportunity, not just for our community, but a huge economic driver for tourism, for people to come here and recreate and spend long term. And if we do a great job with this park, we have the potential to create athletes that are recognizable, that mean something, that's only going to draw more people to our great town. So yeah, just want to say that again, that, you know, I think we should swing for the fences as far as the grant money that is available. But we can do a great job on this. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Yeah. Christopher, sorry, Wietrick.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Chris Wietrick. I live at 1557 Broken Top over by the high school in Sandy. And I am here primarily to be a cheerleader for the pump track and park that's going in. But I left the pom-poms in the truck, so the dance routine is going to have to save for another evening. I'm a mountain bike enthusiast that moved here recently, and making Sandy into a destination rather than drive-through is something that's come up in conversation a couple of times. I've been fortunate enough to spend time in a lot of those destination towns, and it shocks me that Sandy isn't one of those, given the access to the mountain and the trail system that we have here. And it was brought up whether or not a park like this could be a showpiece or something for the town to really hang their hat on. And I absolutely think that it's got the potential to be. I think everybody involved with the project has been shown the example of the pump track that was built in St. Charles, Missouri. I happen to move here from St. Louis, Missouri, so I got to watch that park get built and see what it turned into. And like, what I wouldn't necessarily say this pump track needs to be this, but one of the cool things about that one is it's the layout is book matched. So it's like each side is a mirror image of the other side. And what that allows you to do is two riders can start in the middle, make a lap all the way around the outside, and then meet back in the middle, and it becomes a perfect mirror image racetrack. So you can race somebody without having to be elbow to elbow. Red Bull caught a hold of that and ended up holding an international pump track qualifier race there. So in St. Charles, Missouri, which has no mountains and no mountain biking culture, international World Cup athletes are now showing up to be there. There's been Olympic athletes that have come to practice there and race there. I can see the park in Sandy turning into something really similar. And there's a lot of benefit that can spread out to the whole town that isn't just for people that are into the recreation. The city of Bentonville is a really good example out of Arkansas. They were good enough to put together a report that is publicly available that shows the incredible return on investment that comes from pouring money into mountain bike infrastructure like this. I brought a little one-pager for anybody that might be interested in looking at the information. Yeah, it's the actual report is publicly available, and it's like 30-something pages. The high points are that the positive economic impact to the area is really more than what you might think without knowing much about it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Will Tugu? Too good. I'll get it here.
Yeah. Council Mayor, Will Toogood, primary residence 38336 Hood Street in Sandy. I have other properties in Sandy, and I'm also a small business owner. Also sit on Park Trails and Board, seat 7. Now I'm in my second term. I want to talk, super excited about the project, very passionate about it. It's been great to be part of the meetings, but I wanted to bring it to the economic impact of it. Just FYI, just going forward when we're looking at budgeting and things like that. So these are 2 cities that I chose, or that came to me in an article. First is Mayor from Trinidad, Colorado, 10,000 people, so like size. Says, to emphasize how much impact the skate park has had since its opening, I would like to note that one of the most frequent questions at our Welcome Center is now, how do we get to the skate park? That being said, numerous skaters from across America have come here specifically for the purpose of trying out our new facility. For a city with a population of 10,000, we're impressed with the results. Tony Hawk stopped by and ride with his group a couple of weeks ago, and word travels fast when a class skate park is constructed. And the second community is from Carbondale, Colorado. A little bit smaller, 6,500 people, but very close to Snowmass and a lot of the ski resorts, mountain biking. So similarities to our draw there. Our town has been very pleased with the economic impact that the new skate park has brought to Carbondale, with many visitors staying here over the summer months just to skate our park, with large contests being held here and free advertisements that skaters pass on to each other about Carbondale. Our skate park has been exceptional for our town business. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, Jeff, why don't we try one more time for Mr. Nielsen?
Okay, Mayor, would Mr. Nielsen please raise your, click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen if you're on, although it doesn't look like that person is, Mayor.
Okay. Yep, thank you. We'll go ahead and move ahead with our agenda. Thank you to everybody who provided public comment this evening. Greatly appreciated. All right, we'll move to our consent agenda. If there's
just gonna note that we'll respond to anything.
Yeah, we do respond to public comment in the following city council meeting.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
All right, we're doing our consent agenda. Unless there's discussion, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt.
The motion we adopt our consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion by Councillor Sheldon and a second by Councillor Walker to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. All right, moving ahead to resolutions. I will now open this public hearing for state resolution 2023-07 at 8 p.m. I will now call for any abstentions from the hearing body. I will now call for any conflicts of interest from the hearing body. Jordan, can you please provide the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is resolution 2023-07, which would extend the existing moratorium on development, which leads to new sewer connections. On October 3rd, the City Council adopted resolution 2022-24, which was the moratorium, a temporary moratorium on new development that would lead to new sewer connections. That moratorium expires on April 3rd. At the time of that meeting and the adoption of the moratorium, we had anticipated that we would need to extend that moratorium past the 6 months that is allowed in state law as we are working on a stress test of the treatment plant and its in establishing its capacity. And so based on the requirements of that stress test and the process for then going through the evaluation of the treatment plan and the system's capacity, we anticipate that at some point we will be able to lift the portions of the moratorium that limit the issuance of new permits. But I will explain in a little bit the timing of the stress test and the evaluation and when we can expect that. But on the good news, the stress test has begun. It started Tuesday, March 14th. It will conclude by the end of April. But after that point, we have to gather all that data, the sampling, the reports, there's flow modeling that go into a comprehensive capacity evaluation, which then gets reviewed by our environmental regulators to determine what that final number will be, or at least the number that will be determining our treatment plant capacity. So even with all that amount of work and time it's going to take to finalize and quantify the capacity of the treatment system, we're still anticipating that we'll be able to allow additional developments to connect to the system beyond the current 120 RUs that are allowed in the current moratorium, and then the proposed extension of the moratorium. As the council is aware, and the community, I think at this point, is we are working through the enforcement proceedings with the U.S. Department of Environmental Protection Agency, the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, and we at this point, anticipate that process will conclude in the next few months, and then anticipate that additional development projects will be allowed to connect beyond those 120 ERUs in the existing moratorium. So we believe we'll have more information about that in the next couple of months, and the trajectory of the moratorium and the capacity of the treatment system. And again, this is just an extension of the existing moratorium that we anticipated, given the schedule for the stress test and determine the evaluation capacity of the treatment plant. And as we conclude our enforcement negotiations with the EPA and the DEQ. So with that, staff recommends adoption of resolution 2023-07 and turn it back to you, Mayor, for conducting the public hearing.
All right, we'll go ahead and save some of our questions for staff until after public testimony. For public testimony, here are guidelines for those who wish to speak. Please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it is sufficient to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker, even if that's all you say. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the body, they must formally be placed into the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, email your materials to the recorder at recorder@ci.sandy.or.us, and staff will make sure your evidence is properly processed. All right, to offer public testimony. For those joining us in person this evening, please raise your hand and indicate that you wish to speak. If you're participating online, click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. I will then call each person when it's their turn to speak. Each participant will receive up to 3 minutes to testify, and the city recorder, that's Jeff, will let you know when you have 20 seconds remaining. Our council rules do require that each person state their name and address for the record. I will now call on testimony on the proposed resolution. Please, Mac.
Hello again. My name is Mac Even. I live at 5360 Southeast Chase Road, Gresham. And I'm mostly here to preserve my standing. I'm not exactly sure what all that means, but my lawyer told me that that's what I should do, is come here to preserve my standing. I'm opposed to the moratorium. And I would also like to say I do appreciate staff's communication with me throughout the process in the last 6 months, and so on the council as well. I feel like I'm being included and kind of part of the process. I know that not everybody can tell me everything that's going on, and I understand that, but the more information that we have, as a community and the developers community would be greatly appreciated. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oh, and by the way, I do support the new bike park. I think that looks pretty sweet.
Let's
Put it in there.
He does propose to like the bike park. All right, I will continue to call for testimony online or in person. Jeff, is there any hands up online?
No, Mayor, there are no hands up online.
All right, I'll call for a staff recap and recommendation.
No recap, Mayor. Only thing I didn't mention was of the 120, we've issued 27.7, which leaves us with 92.3 ERUs remaining for this existing moratorium. And like I said, we're anticipating that we'll be able to obtain additional ERUs once we complete the evaluation or we conclude the proceedings with EPA.
I don't mean to speak out of turn, but the update we got of our last negotiation, is that not public information yet, or?
Not yet, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will now call in a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Councillor Exner and a second by Councillor Sheldon to close the public hearing at 8:08 p.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Discussion.
I just have a question. It's more semantics on the language. It says that it's an extension for 6 months and it goes through October 3rd. If it started on October 3rd, wouldn't it end on October 2nd? To keep the language 6 months?
It's probably a good question for Josh. I think we were just doing a direct, like 6 months from October 3rd,
I was just, when I read it, I
good
circled
semantic
it.
question.
I didn't know if that made, if that was 1 day longer, I didn't want to be out of requirement with the 6 month.
I knew I liked you for restraint.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long.
Well, let's figure that out.
And then my only comment on that, my comment for this is, to me, I don't like the moratorium. I never did, but I understand why we're there. And I'm going to support it because we just don't have the infrastructure to take care of the business we need to with the growth we're having. So I get that. We're paying for past lessons not learned now. But I am encouraged that we only had 27 approved in 6 months. That tells me that the 92 should keep home building going. It's not like, I don't think we've been denying a lot, is from what I've heard from the planning department. So I know it's a touchy subject, but it's not as, I thought maybe we would have given out maybe 100 of them by now.
Sure.
But only 27. So, and I know the different phases of projects different too. But I'm happy to hear that, at least from one person, that the city's being more transparent, or as transparent as they can be with the development community to help them understand where we're at as a community as we go through this trying time. So thank you.
I like to just say that the moratorium weighs on all of us on council and me personally. Every decision we make, every conversation we have, it feels like the moratorium, it plays a part, right, in our capacity and our infrastructure that we have to do. Right now we've got the stress tests that we got to get through. We've got to get those numbers back and see, how the stress test performs. And once we get through that, we've got to use those numbers in our negotiations and back and forth with the EPA and DEQ. And so I know all of us we're at the edge of our seats waiting for some of those numbers to come back, and then the results of the preceding negotiations that happen. But this is I know it's not worth much, but this is important to us, and we think about you guys, and we hear what you're saying, and you're top of mind for us all the time. Yeah.
Okay. There are several pieces of the limitations that are put on by the negotiations that I disagree with and would have done differently had we had more ability to hammer back on some of the different acronym agencies that we've been in conversation with. But saying that, I understand the need for us to follow directions and the potential trying to find a politically correct way to say penalties that would be in effect had we not agreed to what we have. So I see the bigger picture. It makes me think that maybe we have enough of the work that has been put together by our staff that has been Herculean in the last couple of years. I'm very impressed by the work that Jordan and her staff, Jenny, and the rest have put together to make this thing move along. I will make one comment. Part of the reason why I understand that there's only a couple dozen approved connections is because the limitation of just walking through the door and getting the permit, many of our developers can't even walk through the door. So those have been just set aside until we get through the moratorium. So the remainder is developers, builders, people who meet the list of criteria that gives us a chance to give them or sell them a connection. It's been pretty limited. So the frustration is that not only is it limited, but also the reputation that Sandy has that I think has struggled, even though I know every one of the councils here have expressed some sort of frustration about how we've been limited. I know that people look at us from afar and say, looks like it's a tough road to hoe, so maybe we'll just go somewhere else. And I struggle with that a lot. But in terms of being able to support the referendum,
Moratorium.
no, the extension of the moratorium, what I'm thinking of. I'm there. I'll just have to say yes, but it's a bitter pill.
I agree with what you said, Mayor. Does weigh heavy on us. I think too, we also look at this from a development perspective, but thanks to all that Herculean effort that has been going on, the water, the discharge we're putting into Tickle Creek is cleaner and more consistently clean than anything we've ever done in the past after years of repeated violations. And that's the only bright spot in this, and that those changes that we're making aren't just temporary either. It's systemic in terms of the staffing, the approach, the policies, the funding, the redundancy that's being put in place, all make for long-term benefits that are going to benefit everybody down from us and downriver. So,
All right.
Just I'll make one more
Oh,
comment.
please do.
Yeah, I also feel like it's, you know, a heavy lift for the developers that had stuff in the pipeline, and I'm, you know, while we have to kind of put this into place, it's not something any of us feels good about. The one thing that I'm hopeful about is that, you know, we've got 92 permits and, you know, possibly more in the future, don't know, but the one thing that I would like to hopefully see us do is clarify any kind of process to evaluate, you know, who gets any additional permits in the future with some sort of a process. I don't, you know, if it's first come, first serve, or something else that has a little bit more rationale to it. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it just seems prudent to kind of have a process and some rationale for awarding those limited permits if we don't already have that. And so bringing something like that to the council in future meetings would be helpful, I think. That's all.
Thank you. You ready for a decision? Is there a motion?
Would you like an answer to?
Oh, I was
gonna,
please.
Yeah. Well, the language says to October 3rd, but the statute isn't clear if it's doesn't say less than 6 months. It just says it can't be longer than 6 months. And so technically it turns 1, or it's a 6 months on the 3rd of April, and then would hit another 6 months on October 3rd. So that's when it would be.
So I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
Do we have to do the first and second reading on this?
There's no readings on this,
It's
correct?
just a resolution.
So it's just a resolution.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I move to adopt resolution 2023-07.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Counselor Mayton and a second by Counselor Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. All right, moving ahead, report by the city manager.
Oh, we have one other item there, the park naming policy.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Rochelle. I thought I was just going to start naming the parks. I was just moving ahead.
Do we need a motion or?
Great, thank you, Mayor. So yeah, we're developing a new park, and therefore it could call for a new name. And so in order to do that, a park naming policy seemed appropriate, and that was a request to the council. So we created a park naming policy that we ran through the Parks Board. They provided comments. We incorporated those comments, and it's here today before you for if you have any questions or clarifications. Otherwise, there's some basic parameters. I won't read the policy out, you know, word for word, but basically there's general naming parameters. It talks about how if we want to name something after an individual, for example, the mayor, there's some stipulations there.
She sure knows how to butter up, doesn't she?
And then,
Maybe, yeah.
And then when to activate the policy. And then, of course, once the policy is activated, then there's certain steps. So for example, creating an ad hoc naming task force, which will include the Park and Rec Director, 2 members of the Parks Board, and then the council liaison to the Parks Board, and 3 members from the community. And then the task force will create and decide the solicitation from the community, if that's necessary, and what that process should entail. And then in all cases, the city council has the prerogative of accepting or rejecting the proposed name. And I guess Steph just asks if you have any questions or clarifications, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, there's a resolution attached to the staff packet. It's resolution 2023-09. And if the council activates or approves that resolution tonight, we'll name our first park.
Please, Kathleen.
Hey, I had, so it's on page 8 of 9. So it's your exhibit A materials. And towards the bottom, do you have it on your, no, we don't have it on the screen, huh? Okay, well,
I can put it on the screen.
that'd be great, yeah, if you could, please. I was just kind of confused about what we were, and it's under the exceptions part. But it basically says, and I'm on page, actually, the bottom of 8 and the top of 9. And so, yeah, renaming a park, blah, 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 has been made a condition of accepting more than 51% of the total cost of land purchase, comma, full development of any park, comma, renovating or building onto a rec center, like an addition of a pool to an existing center, comma, covering an existing park amenity, covering an existing, adding park restrooms or making other significant building improvements. So I was kind of joking with somebody in my household that, if somebody donated a restroom, that it could be the park or the restroom could be named after them or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So if it's 51% of the value of that, so for example, 140,000 for a restroom at the community campus, if that person wanted to pay for over 51% of it, then they could have a restroom named after them.
Okay.
If they wanted to.
Can you
aspire
name a
to new
restroom
things,
after
I
a
guess.
political opponent?
If you donate 51% of the number, yeah. You have somebody in mind?
That was my question. And then covering an existing park amenity, is that like a shelter? Is that what you mean there? Those, and then, the total cost, it was like 51% of each one of those things. I couldn't tell if it was in collectively the whole thing or any one of those things. And so that was a little confusing. So if somebody donates 51% of the total cost of the land purchase, they could have the park named after them.
Yeah, potentially, and then it would activate the policy where you have the ad hoc naming task force, and then they would evaluate, does this follow this policy? And yeah,
I'm just like, if somebody else contributed the money for the development of the park, that's kind of where it got a little bit confusing when you have all these people giving money. God, wish we had that problem, huh? Hope we have that problem. But anyways, yeah. Okay. Other than that, that was the only kind of a little bit of clarification that you might want to make in the future, but I totally support the proposal as it is.
And I just want to make sure this is just for parks, trails, and recreation. So for example, if we want to develop a process to name the wastewater treatment plant after Councilor Exner, that's a different process, correct?
It'll be a memorial.
It's a process.
No, but I mean, but that
It'll be a memorial.
Yeah. But all jokes aside, though, streets, city facilities, those would fall outside of this policy. This policy is just for parks, trails, and recreation, right? Okay.
You can tell me where this is if it's not, if it is there. I could not find the process for, if say a citizen came through and said, there's a person that has been very influential in the community and I want to present that name to the city, name a certain piece of recreation trail, park, whatever. Is there a process for that? Like, does it go to you? Does it go to city manager? Does it go to the council?
Yes, so the answer is yes, there is a process. So there's a process for naming something after an individual. And then there's also a process for renaming something and memorializing somebody.
You missed my question.
Yeah.
I didn't say it correctly. how does a person bring to whoever the name change, name presentation? Does it go to a certain person, team, community, Parks and Recreation Committee? What is?
Yeah,
Is
so
there a
I would
place for it?
imagine like if somebody was interested in memorializing someone, it would maybe come to my attention. We talked to the Parks Board about, is this something that we want to consider? It would come to the council for approval, like, yes, let's consider it. And then that would activate the policy, having the ad hoc task force, and there's proper documentation that's required to memorialize a facility. Or it could be something too, where maybe they approach Jordan and then Jordan would talk with us, and then we take it through the same channels.
Okay.
Doesn't it have to, they either have to meet those criteria or 51% of,
Or the exception.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt resolution 2023-09, policy for naming or changing of parks, trails, and recreation facilities.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion by Counselor Sheldon and a second by Counselor Walker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. Thank you for your work on this, Rochelle. It's appreciated. All right, Jordan, you're up.
Thanks, Mayor.
No more passing the buck.
So Clackamas City's dinner this Thursday at 6 p.m. At Smoky Hearth. Looking forward to it. We have Senator Bonham that will be there for some mayor making remarks on the covered structures program. I think we have 36 now RSVP. So hopefully the weather will hold out for a few more days. I just saw that we have potentially more snow in the forecast for this weekend.
Unbelievable.
Never ending winter. And then, the legislative update, I think you've received some notes on this. If you're attending the LOC briefings, or if you've seen their, actually, does everybody get the LOCs? Okay, good. So they've been giving some legislative updates on that. I think they're hearing from cities, getting some feedback about advocacy towards home rule authority, and what are we doing about some of these House bills around housing that are really coming fast and furious right now. I think there's 4 that are particularly, I'd just say, aggressive towards stripping land use process away from local governments. And those are all slated for hearings this week, committee hearings. So we are definitely watching those to see how serious the legislature is in moving any of those. Some of the more, I would say, scary for our purposes, because we do care about things like the Sandy style, protecting the environment, things like that, where some of these bills will pretty much strip the variance process or ability to deny variances. And also one bill in particular, I think, is just pretty much straight approval of all residential developments. So there's not much to that bill yet, which is probably an okay sign for how serious it might be, but you never know right now with the amount of bills that are coming through this session and being driven by the governor. So I know we had a discussion with this with our consultant on how much advocacy or how much testimony, and a lot of these, Jeff has been working with Nellie on monitoring what activity is happening, who's testifying, who's not. Is LOC stepping in? Is there a lot of opposition? So that, strategy wise for us, it'd be okay for us to make comments, but our priority continues to be funding. And there's been a number of meetings, both by our consultant, by staff, and the mayor, to advance our ask for water. We've also are working on the congressionally directed spending, especially through our senators, but also Blumenauer's office, on positioning ourselves for any funding that we can get for water and wastewater. The House earmark process is still open. We do have an ask through transit with the county. I think 5 transit agencies submitted for capital funding, which is a potential, given that we were able to combine power there. We think we have kind of the delegation that would support transportation projects for the Mount Hood area.
So Jordan, we can ask for more than $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's just what we received last time, but we can ask for a larger amount. And my understanding is the county and some of the local cities just actually aren't as proactive as we're being with asking for some of this federal stuff. So I feel like we can maybe get a little bit more aggressive with our financial ask. How are the preliminary conversations going?
Good. I think there's some uncertainty on the earmark process with the budgeting process at the federal level this year, but there always is, but there's some little different dynamic
With the House.
Yeah. So some of that's kind of wait and see. There's I think Biden's holding a all-day webinar about the infrastructure bill. And so some of the questions we're asking on that is sort of the forgivable portions of, especially for smaller communities, for WIFIA, for example, for some of the funding that we've already have in place, SRF and WIFIA. Can we leverage some of the other dollars to make those grants or forgivable? To be easier process and going through a whole another grant cycle with like we got from the EPA and the last year's appropriations. And this also, we sent out, I think, some information about the budget process and then your calendars, just a reminder about that, because calendars will get busy with the added meetings on Thursdays starting in April 20th, I think a month from today. So I've been working hard on the budget, Tyler and everybody else, Jenny, Michelle. But we do have a budget committee now. I had some questions about how that process is going to unfold. And the first meeting clearly will be, electing a vice chair and chair, but also the presentation of the proposed budget message. And then typically what we do is then have the departments do presentations of their budgets, of course, identifying council goals and things in that process. One of the things that will be a part of the conversation will be the ARPA dollars, which is really additional funding that we've received in the last couple of years that can be used for other council directives, other spending priorities. So I know Councilor Exner had a question about that, and ground rules may be something that we want to talk about in that first meeting too. I understand that is something we've done before.
I'll just real shortly say that because I've been through a few of these, I've seen some different processes worked. They've been similar the last couple of times, but I've seen other formats, so that there are some things that I was hoping to incorporate into the budget discussion. So I was hoping for some specifics about how that might all occur. So
we'll publish it. We'll get the draft agendas out there for you too. But send me, I'm happy to hear ideas. And then finally, ODOT would like to extend an invitation for ribbon cutting for the Tenai Vista sidewalk, and I think they're waiting for the weather to improve to do that. But I think they were looking at like May 1st or something around that date. So we'll keep you updated on that. But pretty expensive project for both agencies. So probably be something nice to do once the weather turns.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you. All right, on the council reports. Don?
Thanks. At my first Sunday night meeting, that was educational. I have a lot to learn in terms of figuring out how I can help out there. Luckily, there was a familiar face there with Jeremy.
Yeah.
So he won't go away.
He's around.
I am excited to pass that we passed the naming resolution. So my next question is, what are we going to call the community campus? Because I hate the name community campus for a crown jewel park. I think we need something more economic, more tourist, something more. And then a reminder to schedule some time for Sura, put some committee time to talk about park and funding and things like that on there.
You mean the retreat type meeting, or or Sura to get together and talk specifically about the community campus?
Specifically to talk about community campus and potentially what we are hoping to spend out of there already, plus whatever else might want to. And related to that, did we get an answer as to what the future of that seat would be for where Phil is retiring?
My understanding was it's at their last fire board meeting. It was expressed from Carl that we would like to have a member of their board who serves. And I think that
Fill
they're-
that role.
They're feeling, and they're figuring that out.
Gotcha. And then lastly, I don't know, a time or two ago, I brought up the issue that there were a number of code ties that tie back to the fire district. Is that something that's on somebody's tickler list to clean up or to at least explore and decide whether or not we do need to make changes or not? Okay. Cool. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Carl.
As we're talking about fire, I'll go ahead and carry on. I did attend the last fire board meeting, and I did extend the ask that they come up with somebody who would replace Phil, and the conversation was around the elected officials, so I'm pretty sure that'll happen. I don't think there is anybody that, or any statement that says it has to be from one or the other, but in the past, and they were very open to it, so there's that. The fire IGA did get signed by both chiefs, and so it's in effect, or it will be in July date. One of the things that I still see concern about, and you brought up the ODOT would love to have a ribbon cutting for the sidewalk. When they put all the extended sidewalks, the ADA pieces and such, there were a few hazards that they built into their additions. And I'm just wondering, do they put a process together to go through and correct some of those hazards? I know we've asked that in the past, but the most obvious one for me is it's right in front of my office. There's several corners of curb that we see people trip relatively regularly. They come around the back blind corner. First thing to do is they hit that little step, and it's causing people to fall. Plus, we now have barricades up, and it's pain in that respect. So if there is a process for that, I'd surely love to hear about it. Push that thing forward. Another item, I hear that there have been several visits to the legislature, and there may be some changes in some of the asks and the message that we're sending. I am going to be at the legislature during the Realtors Day, and my conversations will be probably the same sorts of people, and I don't want to get crosswise with that, so I don't know if there is a chance we could sit down and make sure that those.
We're only asking for one thing. $14.8
$14.8
million for water infrastructure.
What was this $1 million that I heard?
Oh, that's our federal ask.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our team working with our U.S. Senator and Congressman to get a
Okay, the
federal
U.S.
money.
federal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oregon side. All right.
Yeah.
Concerns me that we do more than one voice for different things. I think we need to be very careful about how we ask. Make sure it's just what the council is interested in seeing. Otherwise, we get confusion at the legislator level.
That's all we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, literally, like it's pretty much been me and Jordan and Nellie, and you get 15 minutes, and you can only ask for so much in 15 minutes, and it's all about water.
Okay. That's it.
Hi, we didn't have a library board meeting this month, but they're just going gangbusters. They've got all sorts of programs going. They have a new kids early childhood center at the library. They've got the reading programs. They've got take and make sessions. They've been going out to Vista Apartments and doing some things there at the library. Teen programs, adult programs. I mean, they are just have so much. And I just want to kind of plug the rental program where you can just rent just about anything at the library. They have a whole, all the different libraries, but you can rent a sewing machine or a post hole digger, just about anything. So cool program, and the library folks are just doing a great job. Other than that, I kind of looked through this. I had actually read this report that was sent out about the economic development potential for biking, and I'm familiar with the things that Will mentioned, the towns in Colorado. I think I agree with everybody, the potential for this park to really leverage tourism to our town and, leverage Sandy Ridge and Sandy River Park and all is huge. And I think it's going to help increase they're talking about real estate values go up around the park. They're talking about, more businesses, that Robbie has, the mountain bike coaching one, but there's, more shops for selling bike stuff and skateboards and doing things like that. And then just the food carts and the restaurants and the Airbnbs and all that are kind of peripheral around that potential. So I'm excited about what all this can bring as far as economic development to our town. And I think we really want to kind of try to really, like that one guy said, and my typical response is go big or go home kind of thing is really, and I think there's other grants out there that one gentleman talked about, that there's other grants out there that we can also leverage. So excited for it. Thank you for all the hard work you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Rich.
I can't remember when my voice holds up. I realize it's ODOT, it's ODOT property. Is there anything we can do crosswalk wise by the food carts? Someone's gonna get hit right there. People are walking out between cars, and I realize they don't want to walk up to the crosswalk or down, but I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I do know that I think the last few weekends, every time I drove by, like somebody will step out behind the car.
I don't mean to interrupt. It's a good point. Lucy and her friends are consistently asking after the bus drops them off there to walk up to the food carts and all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot of kids going there after school too, So.
Yeah, these are kids. I mean, these are just, teenage kids that are probably coming up or from down the mountain and crossing to go to Shell and stuff. And someone's going to get whacked at it.
I didn't mention my light speed thing this particular time, but I think that's part of the answer is we got to make sure people are not speeding through there. And then, then the crosswalk.
There's just a lot of blind with all the cars parked, a shorter stature person is going to step out and you can't see them until they're in the roadway. So I don't know what we can do. I realize it's ODOT. I just wanted to bring it up because that's it.
Thank you. I'll be really quick then.
Right.
No planning commission, no economic development meeting either. So no meetings for me. Although I did drive to Wendy's on lunch today and noticed a huge curb section broken out right there. And it fallen over into the driveway as you come off the 26. I don't know if somebody reported that or not, but the first time I saw it was today. So other than that, I'll defer the rest of my time.
That's great. So I had a good conversation with Jim Etzel, who runs Sports Oregon. It's actually, it's made me a little bit late to my meeting with Dawn. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on, especially the legislature trying to allocate money for youth athletics, soccer fields, baseball fields, especially in rural communities. That ties into the economy. We're talking not just building off a one-off baseball field, right? But stuff that can host like weekend tournament sites and those kinds of things. And, I think the advantage of trying to get into that game, so to speak, a little bit is our kids get it Monday through Thursday, and a little bit on the weekend too, but then you get all some outside families come spend money in town. And if we do it right, I know there's a lot of turfing that takes place, but maybe there's recycled water programs and stuff as well that can come into some of that. And I think there could be a good opportunity to increase some recreation with some state dollars and investment that's economic activity. So he's sending me some information on that. And I was really excited by that conversation. My wife Mackenzie and I were able to go to the museum to Sandy Chamber morning event, and it was just a good reminder of just the great resource the museum and the historical society is here in town. One of the things they've done a good job of kind of chronicling some of the historic buildings. We need to do a good analysis of some of these buildings, and some of them are to a point beyond repair where we need to think, are they beyond their life? But we also need to really take into the historic nature of some of these buildings and preserving some of our history that we need to be preserving. We forget a lot of times that we're a pioneer town with, some really cool history, and we talk about our naming policy and all that. I think Jeff just got a list of all the mayors and city councilors going back to eons ago that they sent over. Just a lot of that stuff, is really helpful in naming policies, those kinds of things. I had a conversation with Valerie, who's the president of the Mountain Festival. They're gung ho and moving strong on the Mountain Festival this year, which is exciting. That will be back to back. I never thought I'd have to say I'm excited at back to back mountain festivals, but we're on our way there. They're charging ahead on the parade. Sounds like a lot of the opening stuff in the parade is going to be kind of city floats and stuff, and really putting our city on display, which is exciting. The PAC board, been doing those meetings. Again, just reiterate everybody's saying, I think that's, we have a lot of challenges going on in our city right now. That's one of the fun things, right? That I think that we should be able to come together and do something that's really neat for everybody. Just putting everybody's head, economic development does. How many slots do we have open that we need to fill now, Jeff? Do you know?
2, Mayor.
2. So be thinking about local business owners and people in town that would like to plug into that committee. We do have a couple of openings, and I think it's a good opportunity to kind of reimagine that committee a little bit, but let's go get some active people and plug them in. So be thinking about that. Clackamas budget cuts. The consternation has just begun. Yeah, please.
We had like 3 or 4 SBA small business owners talk today.
Yeah.
I think reaching out to those people who testified, I think would be, they bring a different perspective.
I think so. Yeah, I think definitely. Let's talk about that. Clackamas County budget cuts. Consternation is just beginning. Remember, this new courthouse coming in, everything from sheriffs to DA to library systems. There's just going to be a lot of conversation. We have the county services building. There's just going to be a lot to kind of, just keep aware of, and the conversation. We're all going into budgeting season, so I'm sure it's just going to intensify in the weeks and months ahead. And then I'll just close out with a reminder, Thursday night. I think just about everybody's planning on going to that. It's a good opportunity to kind of brag about our little city here a little bit and learn about what's going on in the legislature from Senator Bynum and Bonham, and I know Representative Heeb and his wife is going to be there as well. So it's a real good opportunity for us to kind of have some dialogue with our elected leaders and do a little bit of bragging. So anyways, thanks everybody. We'll go ahead and adjourn.